Hi there, welcome to my channel, and if you're new here, my name is Felicia Mesadieu. I am a creative and professional graphic designer based in Houston, Texas. I work for a startup tech company in the aesthetic space, and I freelance on the side. I love to document on my channel design and my experience in design, leveling up in my career in design, and I love to talk about my life. I love to document my life. So if you're new here, welcome to the Felicia experience. I said this is what I want to do. I want to go back to school for graphic design. And I remember telling one of my best friends that I wanted to go back to school for graphic design. I told a few of my close friends, and I told my sister, and I applied. I applied to go to school for graphic design, I think either that night or the next day. And me being nervous, trying to figure out, okay, how is this gonna work? Because at the time I was going to school with, I was living with my mom, and the school that I had applied to was in Glendale, and I was just like, okay, how is this gonna work? How am I gonna be able to do both? But I always kept it in the back of my mind. But I ended up getting a full-time job during this time. And I remember thinking to myself, I'll do both. I was at the full-time job, I was working for an advertising agency, but I remember before I even was hired, I was in that interview, and I remember telling one of the interviewers, because I had 3 people interview me, and I remember telling one of the interviewers that I was working on my design degree. She asked me, well, what are one of your weaknesses? And I said, I think that I could be more creative, and I'm working on that. And so I've decided to go back to school for graphic design. And then she said, well, I just want to let you know that this isn't a creative job. And I was like, okay. And I didn't know how long I was gonna last there, but I did put the graphic design degree pursuit on pause, and I ended up working the job full-time. It wasn't a good fit. I was an account coordinator for an account manager. My account manager was so rude to me. He was just mean. He was very, very mean and condescending, and he would yell at me and talk to me any kind of way, and I was constantly having conversations about him and creating boundaries, him, you know, respecting me as an employee. And then I would always come home crying. I was always in Excel. I was always in Excel. And I am not Excel. I'm not an expert in Excel at all. And I didn't like it. I remember my sister is an Excel wizard. She's an Excel whiz. And I remember my sister would have to do some of my reports for me. I know. And I remember coming home crying to my sister, and at the time, my sister's husband, and he said, well, why don't you just quit? And I was like, I can't quit. And they were like, yes, you can quit. I think, I had a really long commute, because I ended up moving back home. I ended up moving back with my sister. Oh my God, it was just so much during this time when I was living in California. So I got that job. I ended up moving back in. I was living with my mom, ended up moving back in with my sister in Santa Clarita. The job was in North Hollywood. No, the job was in Hollywood, but then the job moved to Sherman Oaks. And I was traveling like in total 4 hours a day to get to and from this job. In addition to the time that I would have to work. I was so unhappy. I was always talking about work. I was always complaining about work. I was a broken record about work. All I did was talk about work. When I would Marco Polo with my friends, I would just talk about work. I don't think I've ever talked about work so much the way that I talked about work when I was working at that job, and the way that I was complaining about it. I complained about that job so much. I mean, I've had my complaints in this season, but the complaints that I had back then, they were god awful. So I remember putting in my 2 weeks, and then I was trying to figure it out. I remember going like on this at this point, I was 34, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm gonna be 35, I can see 40. What am I going to do? And I decided to get, I don't think I was working. I went on a fast, and I was trying to figure out if I wanted to get my graphic design degree. I like redirected my YouTube channel. The content was now, I was focusing on style and personal style, which I love, but it didn't feel authentic because I wasn't where I wanted to be financially. And so I didn't feel right talking about personal style and clothing and telling people, oh, invest in yourself, invest in your clothes, and I couldn't do it. So it was just not fully authentic. I had the right idea, I had the right concepts. I even was giving the right information, but it felt inauthentic. And so I wasn't fully committed. I ended up getting a job. My sister got me another job. I ended up getting let go from that job. And then I said to myself, okay, this is it. I'm 34, I'm going to be 35 soon. I need to get my life together. I'm living with my sister and her husband and her 2 children. I'm living in a room. I was sleeping on a bunk bed for a very long time, for almost 4 years. And I think that next year I actually was able to sleep on a bed. But I ended up sleeping on a bed, but like my life just was not what I had pictured at 34 years old. And especially from having my own apartment and having a job. It wasn't the best job, but I was able to support myself. I was independent. Excuse me, I was independent. I had a car. I had all these belongings, but once I moved to California, it just felt like my life just went completely downhill, and I thought that I was going to level up, and it was just like a complete plummet for me. So I had to really think about, okay, am I supposed to be here? So I always questioned if I should be there. And I do believe I went on a fast. I feel like I went on 2 fasts. And after that, I decided I was gonna go to school for graphic design. I was gonna pursue it. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, I have to fill out the application all over again. And I didn't realize that the college system that I had applied to, well, I ended up getting accepted, but I didn't realize that they were all in the same, they were the college of they were all in the same college system. And so I didn't have to reapply. I had already applied, and I got accepted, and I was like, okay, this is sign number 1 that I'm supposed to do this. And I remember I bought a Udemy graphic design course, and I truly enjoyed that. And I wanted to make sure it was something that I wanted to do. And the second sign was everything went smoothly with my financial aid. And also I was able to go for free. So the money that I received from the financial aid, I just lived off of that. And the money, well, I didn't have to pay for the degree. So that was like the sign, that was the final sign that this is something that I was supposed to do. So I turned 35 and I started college in February of 2020. I went to the College of the Canyons in Santa Clarita. I returned back to school, and I fully immersed myself in the experience. The student that I never could be in college when I received my first degree, I became that student this second time around. It was the most amazing experience. My art classes were phenomenal. My design classes were phenomenal. All the experience that I always wanted to have in undergrad, the first time around, I had it at this 2-year college. It was amazing. I loved my experience. And I fully immersed myself in this program. I gave it all that I could give. However, it was during the pandemic that I realized that I would be having to take online classes, because at that time I was going into school. So I think I was physically on campus for about a month, and then we had to transition into being remote, fully remote online. I did very well online, remote, but then we had to, I was having some challenges with my living situation, and the pandemic just completely changed my family's lives, and I ended up having to move out of my sister's home. And well, my sister and her husband were separated during that time, and I ended up having to move, and I moved into my best friend's house at the time in Houston, Texas. So during that time, going through the pandemic, I'm trying to finish up this degree. Because of my first degree, I did not have to be in school for a full 2 years. So I was able to get my degree in like a year and a half. Because I had my degree and I had all of these credits that applied to a degree from my previous degree as a broadcast news major, I was able to apply some of those credits to my multimedia graphic design degree that I was pursuing at the College of the Canyons. But I was highly encouraged by my instructors to apply for the Snap Design Academy program within Snapchat, which is it's not an internship, it's an apprenticeship. So you are in this academy with several other students. There's several different academies. There's the Snap Design Academy, there's the Snap Lens Academy, there's the Snap Engineer Academy, and then there's the Snap Marketing Academy. And you're in this academy, and you're learning about Snapchat, but then you're also learning how to become a better creative designer, because I was in the Snap Design Academy. And then you're also learning how to apply that to the products within Snapchat based on what your assignments are. And you just level up as a designer. You learn so much, you're pushed really, really hard. And so I was encouraged and recommended for that program by my instructors. I'm telling you, these are all the things that I wanted to do. I wanted to be that high achieving student in undergrad when I was at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. I wanted to be her, but I just wasn't her. I didn't have that grit. I didn't have that motivation. I didn't have that drive. I just had enough drive to get through college. But this here, I felt like I was going over and beyond. And I got accepted into the program. It was the most amazing experience. I had the most amazing instructors. I had the most amazing cohort. And I walked away with a pretty good portfolio. And once I was finished with that program, I had my LinkedIn was looking right after that program. And we got so much feedback on what to do with our portfolios and with our LinkedIns, and we got so much information and instruction with how to navigate your career field moving forward after Snap Design Academy. And at that time, I was all about Snapchat. I kept telling myself, no, Snapchat is it. This is where I'm gonna be after the program is over. It's a bit more of a challenge to get in there, but I didn't end up going or pursuing Snapchat the way that I thought I was going to, but I ended up freelancing right after. So I ended up freelancing for a little bit, and I did a few things, And during that time, I had to pay rent with the friend that I was staying with. I had to pay rent that whole entire time. And it was quite a bit of an increase from what I was paying when I was living with my sister. After Snap Design Academy was over with, I ended up getting a full-time job with Williams Sonoma. Oh my God, I was working remote. It was god awful. And working for Williams Sonoma, even though I needed that money, I could not believe that that was something that I was actually doing. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm not gonna do this long. I remember applying for jobs, but not giving it 100% applying. And then one day my sister says, hey Felicia, you've got to be applying like all the time. You have to keep applying to several jobs. And I applied to this graphic design job. It was a online retail commerce company. It was fairly new, it was a startup. I got all the way to the final design challenge where they allowed me to freelance for a week alongside another person who was interviewing for the job. I was so close, but I didn't get the position. But I had got so far in that interview process, and that just means that it wasn't for me. But then I also applied to another job during that time. And I think this was around Thanksgiving, and this is the job that I work at now. And I wasn't fully 100% sold on the job, but I knew that I needed a job. And I didn't even think that it was a real company. It was also a startup tech company, and I couldn't find any information on it. And I was just thinking to myself, okay. So at that time, the CEO, which I didn't know was the CEO, he was also acting as a recruiter. They were in such an early stage of the company. He conducted the first round of interviews. I was in the interview with another person, and he told us to do the design challenge, and they were looking to hire several graphic designers and hurry up with the design challenge because we could have a job as soon as Thanksgiving is over. So this was around the Thanksgiving of 2021. And I was like, oh my God, I gotta get this done. So finished it up and didn't hear anything. I ended up contacting the creative director at the time and asking, hey, what happened with the design challenge? Is there anything that I can, like what's going on? Just following up. And he basically told me I didn't have the job. I didn't get it. And I was like, oh my God. And then I was so used to asking for feedback. I was so used to asking for feedback, constantly asking for feedback, because I was in Snapchat Academy and I was in college. And so I was in this mindset of what did I do? How can I fix it? Just give me feedback for the next job, the next design challenge, the next employer. He did not respond. And I was like, damn, he can't even respond and tell me what I could do better. I was like, okay, not for me. I was a little hurt though, and never heard from them. I went on about my everyday life. I just told myself, okay, I'm just gonna keep applying, looking for jobs, and I'm gonna freelance. And during this time, it was getting very stressful because I remember really wanting to move into my own apartment. And I just remember thinking to myself, okay, I'll just freelance and I'll live off of doing DoorDash and Grubhub, and that's what I'm gonna do. And I'll make my means that way. I'll earn a living that way, and I'll be able to move into my own apartment. Because I was getting restless. I was so tired of living with people. I had been living with people for, oh my God, for almost 6-7 years at that point. Because I had moved to California when I was 30. And so at that time I was like, I had just turned 37 in 2020 2021, at the end of 2021 in November. So I remember thinking to myself, I am so tired of living with people. I just want my own apartment. And I remember I was starting to get depressed again, but I still kept the faith. And one day, it was, so fast forward into 2022, I'm in this, I'm driving, I think I'm making a donut run for Shipley's Donuts. And I checked my email, and my email is from the creative director from the company that I work for now. And in the email it says, hey, are you still interested in the position? And I'm like, what? The crazy thing is, and let me tell you, I listened to this guy on YouTube. His name is Robert something. I'll put him down in the description box. But I remember I was listening to like this manifestation video that he had about manifesting a job in like 28 days. And he said, you know, if you keep saying this, you will get a job in 28 days. And it basically was just manifesting a job. You would just say that you're gonna manifest the job, you're gonna get this job, you're gonna get this job. And I said it, I don't know if I said it for 28 days, but I kept saying it. I would write it in my journal and I kept thinking about it. And I remember even like writing an offer letter to myself that I had got a graphic design. There was such irony in me, like several days later, receiving that email. And I see that email, and then the creative director says to me, if you're still interested, I would like to interview you. And I was just like, this is so random. This is so random. And I was just like, okay. At this time, I was also being pursued by another company because I had put my portfolio in a Slack channel for Where Are the Black Designers. So I was in correspondence with one of the, I think she's gonna be like a creative director herself. She was putting a team together, and we were in correspondence about me possibly working for her at this company. And I had even had a conversation with one of the recruiters at this company, but they were trying to put together a budget for the team, and it was just taking so long. And so I was still jobless, but I had an option, and then this option came through. And I remember thinking to myself that if that other job comes through, I'm going with that job. I'm just gonna work this job until that other job comes through. So I interviewed with the company that I now work for. I interviewed with the creative director, and then I interviewed with the CEO again. And I was like, oh my God, I have to interview with the CEO again. And then after I interviewed with the CEO, I think I ended up getting an offer letter the next day. And here we are. So I ended up getting this job in January 17th, 2022. That was when I was hired. That was my first day at the job. And I was able to finally move into my apartment in April 15th of 2022. That was such a long journey. When I think about my journey of just how I felt like I had to rely on people for so long, I'm so grateful for where I am right now. But I know now that I'm very tenacious, and I know that I persevere. I'm very persistent. Even in all my struggles, even in all my adversity, I know how to face it. I keep moving. And that's something that I've definitely learned about myself during these last 8 years. I persevere. So I'm ready for the next season of my life. I'll be 39 this month. Whew. It's never too late to start something new. That's what I will say. It is never too late to start something new. So because of that, because I've had to start over so many times, I don't think I'm ever scared to start over anymore. I'm no longer scared to start something new because I feel like I've been a late bloomer in my peer group and I'm always starting over, or I'm I don't feel like I've been where other people have been. Like maybe they're in the middle and I'm in my beginning, and because of that, I just don't have the fear to start something new anymore. And so I think that's a great trait of mine now. But it's definitely been a journey. There's been a lot of tears. There's been a lot of tears. I will say that. But that's my story. There's definitely gonna be a continuation of this story. We have to talk about my first year in tech. It has to be talked about. If you made it to the end of this video, type end. And I just thank you for sticking around, because I definitely told a long story, but it was much needed and I wanted to share it. So yeah, to know where you're going, you have to know where you came from, and I wanted to share that with you today. So if you made it around to the end, you are the real MVP. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.